Hilchis Gerushin Perek Achadoser. Ein Noisen a Saktana. You're not supposed to marry a Ketana. It means even if her father is marrying her off, well, you're supposed to wait until she's a Gdela, and she says, that you shouldn't marry her when she's a Ketana. However, Hanoise Ketana Yesema, V'lei Ratzis Bebal, is Arezu Memanes V'hileches V'ina Tzricha Mimenu Get. This says, when a father marries off his daughter a Ketana, so she's Mekudeshes Menatera. Mamela, the only way to stop to end this kedushin is through a get. Masha'inkin, there's a musig of a ketana getting married midrabonon. To say a ketana that's getting married, she has no father or she's not bershus avia. So then there's a chazal. We learned in Hilchasishus. They were masakin kedushin midrabonon, and that kedushin could be ended through miyun. Miyun means that she states that she's not interested in her husband. That's the din. So there's a din harezu manas and then v'hilachas ve'ena tzricha mimenu get shein kedushin shel ketana kedushin gemurim k'mei shebiyanu, and that level of kedushin Chazal instituted the level of kedushin with a ketana. They also instituted that this level of kedushin could be with miyun. V'chein ketana shehisiya avia, and then v'nis almana in his garsha shehi ketana is also hareki same b'chayavia. That says a father has a rishus over his daughter if he marries her off. So if she is only mikudeshes and then she became an almana or grusha, so she's chizeres l'shus avia. But if she became a nesua, once she becomes a nesua, she's yotzis mishus avia. So later on, if she becomes an almana or a grusha, so she has a father. But on the other hand, she has no father, which she's bershusah, because once she became a nesua, she's no longer bershusah. Mele is hareki sema b'chayavia, which means she's bershus atzma, and therefore v'mnisas k'shitana, and that will be even if her father was involved in the kedushin. But lapel, the father of the chnish doesn't have a right over her minatera, so therefore, or even midrabon, he has no rights over her. So therefore, harezu mimanis. So therefore, she can be made. Because the nekudas advarim is that there is a musik called kedusha ketana. So kedusha ketana of the father is the kedusha minatera. Memela obviously doesn't help miyud. Masha'inkin, there's a kedusha ketana without a father. Either she's a yisema or she's no longer b'rshus avia, and that kedusha ketana there could be miyud. Hachareshes is afal pishin is suel midvrisei from kinasui ketana. A chareshes could also be marry herself off. That's also midrabon. It's only a midrabon dikadin. But nevertheless, litiknu lo shetamai. Kedei sheli iman b'linosa, because Chazal wanted that people should marry a chareshes in order for someone to take care of her. So if someone will realize that she could be memayin whenever she wants, so Memela will be discouraged to marry her. Negei aktana, since she could only be memayin, as long as she's a ktana, so then they're not discouraged, because you hope that they'll marry her and eventually she'll become a gedela and then she won't be able to be memayin. Hashem and chareshes will always be able to be memayin, so therefore people will be discouraged from going to marry her. Halachah Gimel. Ma'anas yaktan bein maneiris and bein mananasuim, bein b'fnei baila, bein shalei b'fnei baila. So miyum could take place regardless. Ukshem shem ma'anas bebal, kach ma'anas b'yavam. So no, she was married, and then she was nafla liyavam, and now she turns around to the yavam. She says she's mamayin in this whole marriage. So retroactively, so the whole marriage becomes ois marriage. Ma'anas bebal zeh. And then she gets married to another husband. Man is b'sheni im nisis lacher b'chem b'shlishi. I feel a kamapom. No, there's no akbala to me. Calls me she ktana yesh le'lamayim. If she's married as a ktana, to say ktana means she married herself off, or her brother or her mother. In other words, it wasn't a kedushin that was done through her father, which has a right to mekadesh or minatera, so she could be memayim. Uktana shalei miyano. Afal pi she nesua. So now the So there's a Ketana which was married, and then she went ahead and got married to someone else. So the fact alone that she got married to someone else, that was the act of miyun. She doesn't have to have a miyun first and then kiddushin someone else. The fact that she was niskach la'acher, that was in itself an act of miyun. Halacha dalet ad Moshe habas ma'anes kol zman she'iktana ad she'tihinayr. Now the din is that kedusha ketana, we're talking about kedusha ketana, which is be'emes only kedusha midrabon. And we'll learn Behemshach that there's two dinim over here. There's one din that after she became a G'dayla, and so he was Bala, the husband was Bala, so then we assume that this Bia was a Bia of Kedushin, so she became a Mukudesh's Gemurim Minateira. After he was Bala, when she's a G'dayla, she becomes a Mukudesh's Minateira. That's din number one. Then there's another din, that once she becomes a G'dayla, even if he wasn't Bala, she can no longer be Mamayim. There's the din of Miyun is only while she's a Ktana. When she becomes a G'dayla, at that point in time, she can't be Mamayim. Even though Be'emes L'churish never really had a Kedushin Gemurim. She only had a Kedushin Midrabanan. But nevertheless, this din that she can be Mamayim is only from Kedushin while she's a Ktana. When she becomes a G'dayla, she can't be Mamayim. Now, when she becomes a G'dayla, when she becomes a Bashtei Mesrishana, so now the question is she a G'dayla? So if she brought Simanim, so she's a G'dayla and she can't be Mamayim. But if it's not Yodua that she brought Simanim, so we, as far as we know, she's still a Ktana. We don't really know that she's a G'dayla. So therefore, and it's only the idea that she can't be Mamayim when she's a G'dayla, the only a Drabana, because Be'emes, Midiraisa, L'chura, Be'etzim, there was no Kedushin in the first place. So Memela, the whole din is that this Miyun doesn't help after she's a Ktana, is only on a Drabana level, because the whole Kedushin is a Drabana level. So therefore, Chazal instituted that as long as we don't know she's a G'dayla, she could still be Mamayim. Masha'inkin, if he was Ba'ala, so if he was Ba'ala, so then it's a Kedushin Minatera. So over here we have to find out, was she a G'dayla or not? So the fact that we don't know she's a G'dayla is not enough, because there's a concern that maybe she was a G'dayla, and then there was a Kedushin Minatera. So therefore, even if we don't know that she had Simonim, so there's more of a concern that she was a G'dayla, and therefore that she had Simonim. That's the Pashtus Hadvar. Halachah dal. Ad Moshe Abbas Manis calls man shichtan. Achiti a naira. Others until we know she's a naira. Oyachi yavada she islandess. Unless we know that she's an islandess. Bamedvar mamurim that we say that achi yavada she islandess, or achi we know that she's a naira. B'shalei bol habal achar shenasis b'shtei meseshon v'yemachot. Aval imigil is man zeven nivala. Is even though we don't know she's a Naira, she's already 12 years old, but we don't know she's a Naira, but there's a possibility that she's a Naira. And not only there's a possibility, there's a Chazaka de Rabbi, the pastors, when she's a Shtemes Rishona, we assume that she's a Via Simonim. So Memela Hail Vahabi'ila Kena Menatet. Abel Migil is Manazev and Nivalo. Is Hail Vahabi'ila Kena Menatet. You have to know if the Be'ila has to be B'fnei Edom or not. That's an issue. The pastors, since they're living together, so we assume that the pastors, the Be'ila was the B'fnei Edom, or no, the Edom saw the Yichud, and Heinen Ed the Yichud, Heinen Ed the Be'il. Is Hail Vahabi'ila Kena Menatet K'mesha B'yarna. So therefore, Reza Einim Mamayim. Now she can't be Mamayim, because over here, there's a suffix Kedushitera. In other words, we're not 100% sure that she was a G'dayla, but on the other end, there's a Svara that she was a G'dayla, or maybe a Svara G'dayla, that she was because she was Becheskas G'dayla. And the Einet Tzricha B'dika L'bion. Shecheskas Shehivia Simon. Now, the Lashon Einet Tzricha B'dika L'bion, Pashtus means that this did that she can't be Mamayim after she was Nivala when she's 12 years old, is even if she wasn't Nivdak. Even if she wasn't Nivdak, we assume that the Bia was a Kedushin Menatera after she was 12 years old, because the Pashto she brought Simonim, Shecheskasa Shehivia Simonim, and therefore once she was 12 years old and she was Nivala, so she cannot be Mamayim. And the Pashtos is on a Kilo Adiraisa level and on a Vadi level. That's the way the Lechem Mishnah learns. Others learn differently because of the Rambam later. But that's the Pashtus Hadvar. Is Nochamal. When in order, if she was not Nivala, so she could be Mamayim until we know she's a Naira, which means that she has 12 years old and she's a Via Simonim, or we know she's an islandess. Mashenkin, if she was Nivala, once she's 12 years old and she was Nivala, so therefore she can't be Ma'anas, because we're Chayshish that she's a Naira, or we Namon, the Chazaka that she's a Naira, and Memela, she's Mukudesh's Menatera, doesn't help with Miyun. Now, what happens? Haresha Nivdika V'leinim Tula Simon. We know for a fact that she didn't have Simonim. No, she was Nivala after 12 years old. And we know for a fact that she doesn't have Simonim. But nevertheless, Hail V'nivala Acha Sheigia Hazman Haroyal Simonim. So it was also a Reza Cheshela. It's a suffix. We're not sure that she wasn't a Gdela. Are Cheshela Maybe there were simonim and they fell off. Get misafik. So therefore, this bashtemas rishon v'yemecha, which was nivala after she was 12 years old, and she was nivdaka, and we see that they saw that there was no simonim. Nevertheless, she needs a get misafik. The mia no acha shenivdaka, and if lepel she made mion acha shenivdaka, and the niskachel acher, and lepel she was niskachel acher, which we pass as the niskachel acher, is tzricha mimanu get misafik. So now she needs to get misafik because we're not really sure. So if she was be'emes not a gedola, so then the mion was a mion. So memela she's mekudeshes la'acher. But if she was a gedola, so then memela comes out that her kedushin was kedushin gemurim. So memela the mion was nothing, and therefore she's mekudeshes l'shein. So therefore, so tzricha mimanu get misafik. She needs a get from the rishon misafik. She needs a get mirishon misafik. And the im nisas, if she got nisas to the second, so if she was just niskacha to the second, so really she could go back to the first. She could go back to the first. In other words, she could get a get from the second. She could get a get from the second and go back to the first if she wants. Masha'enkin, if she was nisas with the second, so memela, so teitzim mizeh, because since she was nisas to the second, so it comes out that the second was a marriage which needs a divorce, because we're not really sure if that second marriage was a real marriage. In other words, if she was really married to the first one, so the marriage to the second one is not a marriage, and nevertheless she needs a divorce, just like the din of a woman that her get was a get bottle, and she was nisas l'sheni, so she needs a get from the sheni. Now, once she has a get from the sheni, she can't go back to the first, because the first, there's a svara, she was married to the first, and the it comes out because the kedushin was a kedushin gemurim, and since the kedushin was a kedushin gemurim, so it comes out that she is machzeh grushasi mishenisas. So the mela says she's going to need a get misheni mirishin. If she was only niskacha l'sheni, she's also going to need a get if she wants to go back to the first. But then she could go back to the first and not really and remain living with the first. If she was nisas l'sheni, so then it's teitzi mizeh, and then v'avlad sofik mamzer mishnei. If lepel she was nivala, knows here what happened was nachamol. She was nivala after she was 12 years old, and then we were boidiker, and she without simonim, and now she was mianobay, and she was niskachalacher. Now we don't really know if she was really married l'rishon, because she was a gdoila already. So she was married minatera l'rishon, and therefore her mion is nothing. So she's an eshes ish. So now the second one lives with her. It's a something mamzer, or maybe no. Maybe she was taka ktana then, and memela. So the kedushin was there was no real kedushin. So memela the mion was mion. She was only midrabana, and memela the mion was a mion, and memela now she was married to the second. And now, if the first one is going to live with her, so Mela, the blood is a mamza. So either one, if the first one lives with her, or if the second one lives with her, either way, the child is a sofik mamza. So Mela, Vavlat, sofik mamza, Mishneh. Yeah. Halachah Vav. Ktana. Yeah. So I mean, the Nekudas Hadvarim is Nachamal. There's two dinim. The Rambam is going to say it again here. That l'chura. There's two din. There's one din is there's a musik called mion. That's the first din. A musik called mion, that a kedushi ktana, that without her father, or she didn't atzma, avia, a ima, so she could be memayna. How long could she be memayna? As long as she's a ktana. Now, if there was no bia, so until we know she's a gdela, which a gdela means that she's shonim and simonim, so she could be memayna. Once we know she's a gdoila, which means she's already, there's shonim and simonim, she cannot be memayim. She cannot be memayim. But nevertheless, the emes is that kedushin is not really kedushin minatera, even after she becomes a gdoila, unless they live together, because there was only kedushin midrabanan. Now, if she was nivala after she became a gdoila, so then the kedushin becomes kedushin minatera. Now, since she was nivala after she became 12 years old, so memela, if we weren't baidik and assumed, see that there's no simonim, so then we assume she's taka mikudeshes, and the pashtus is mikudeshes. Minaterish is becheskas mikudeshes the Rishon, to the person that she got married to. Masha'enken, if they were boidik and they saw that there's no simonim, nevertheless we have a suffix, since it's a suffix deraisa, because maybe it's kedushim and atera. So there's a suffix. Maybe she was a gdela and not true simonim, and therefore, so we deal with her as a suffix mekudeshes. And memela, if someone else got married, we deal with her as if she was a suffix mekudeshes. Halacha both. Ktana shalei mieno v'higdila is afal pi shalei ba'ola baila mishnasis b'shtei mesishon v'yemechot is a rezo enim ma'ames sharei higdila, and that's the din that midrabanon mion doesn't help after she became a gdela, even though be'emes it's only kedusha midrabanon. Utzricha get midivrei seifrim. Why is only midivrei seifrim? Sharei libola achar shehigia l'shtei nairis at shenochash lo shem hivia simonim v'tia safi mikudeshes. In other words, if it would have been bola after she was 12 years old, and we don't know if she was a gdela, so then it's nachash lo shem hivia simonim. So over here the Rambam only says it's a shema. That was what we said before. Before the Rambam said it was becheskas. Here the Rambam says shema. Al kol panim sharei libola achar shehigia l'shtei nairis at shenochash lo shem hivia simonim v'tia safi mikudeshes, and also knows she signed out a suffix Eishes Ish Gemura and signed out 100% the Eishes Ish Gemura. If he was Bola after she was 12 years old without knowing that she has Simonim, so she would be a suffix Eishes Ish Gemura. If he would be Bola after she's already Shtei Masrishana and we know she has Simonim, so then she would be a Vadi Eishes Ish Gemura. So but she's not in such a case because he was late Bola. She only needs a get als being a ktana. Shehem midivrei seifrim. Lefichach im amda v'neskatsha acha shegodla. So now we have a case. She was married als a ktana, and that kedusha was kedusha ktana. Now she became a gdela, so she can't be mamayin anymore. Miyun doesn't help. But now she got married to someone else. So really, be'emes, she's married to the other person, to the second person, minatera. And to the first person, she's only married on a D'Rabbanan level, which should have helped Miyun. It's just that now she's a G'dayla, so Miyun doesn't help when she's a G'dayla. So lefichachim amda v'neskatsha acha shegodla is toifsim ba kedushin shel sheni. That's kedushin minatera. Now v'im girish harishon. Now the din is she's married to the first one on a D'Rabbanan level, which really she's being mamayin in the first one, but lepel the Miyun is not helping. And now she's married with the second one on a deraisa level, but a kedushin, not nesui. That's it. Is im girish harishon. If the first one is megarisher, is yichnis hasheni. So the second husband, which is a real husband, minatera, could be koinis. Aval im girish hasheni. But if the second husband, which she's married to minatera, is megarisher, is leyekayim harishon. So now the first one, which she's married to midrabanan, and there's no possibility of miyun, because miyun bichlal would be able to undo the marriage even l'mafreya. But now she's already a g'dayla she can't be mamayim. So it's going to come out that she was married to the first one, and then now she was married to a second one. The second one gave her a get. And now she's going to stay married with the first one. So the first one can't remain with her because Shem Yemru hears the Grushasim Achesh Nesarso. That's the din if Kiddush Hasheni. If Kiddush Hasheni, so there's an option that the first one, in other words, if the second one can give her a get, and she can remain with the first one. That's the first one. If the first one gives her a get, in Kiddush Harishon Yichnas Hasheni. But if on the other end, if the second one gives her a get, is the first one can't remain with her. So if the Sheni was a Mekadisher, so we have the Eitzah that the Rishon should give her a get and Yichni Sheni. That's what we said. The Rishon should give her a get. No, the Sheni was Mekadisher. So Memela, and really she's Mekudeshes L'Sheni. So there's an Eitzah that Vim Girish Rishon Yichni Sheni. However, in Baal Sheni, Kedem Sheigarish Rishon. So Nachamo, she was married to the first one on a D'Rabbanan level. She can't make meal. Then she got married to the second one on the deraisa level. And not only she was kedushin to the second, now it was Baal Sheni. Kedem Sheigarish Rishon. So then it's Teitzim Mizeh Mizeh. Why? even though the Chura, she was only married to the first one on the Rabbanon Dika level. So let that first one give her a get and let her remain with the Sheni, because Mishneshadema Leisha Shishama Shemes Baila, Vinisas, Vacharkach Bo Baila. Because so over here is the same thing. In other words, there was no, she was really married to the Rishon, and she lived with the second. She already lived with the second. So even though she was only married to the Rishon on the Rabbanon Dika level, but over there also, the Moshe, if a person was married to it was a Cherish Nasa Pikachas, and then again the same story that Shamu Shemes Baila, and then she got married. So the din over there is also Teitzim Mizeh Mizeh. Even though the Kedushin was only a Kedushin D'Rabbanan, but since she lived with another husband, so she needs a get from the second husband, she needs a get from the first husband. And it takes Mizeh. So over here also, if Lepel, the second husband, was only Kedushin, so then there's an Eitzah that the first husband should give her now a get, and Yichnis Hasheni. But if the second husband was already Bo'aleho, so then there's no Eitzah that the first one should give her a get, and then he should remain with the second one. Then it's Teitzi Mizeh Mizeh, aber ve'eina Vlad min Hasheni Mamzer. The Vlad min Hasheni is Mamzer because Lepel, the Vlad min Hasheni is really, that's a proper husband. The first husband wasn't really a proper husband. The first husband was only a Kedushin Midrabanan. However, when Bo'al Arishin Kedim Shegir Hasheni is a Vlad Mamzer, is Mamish Mamzer. We're taking a woman that was in Skadish Kedushin Midrabanan to the first, and now Kedushin Minatera to the second. So Memela, we're saying if the second was Bola before the first one gave her a get, so then the child is not a mamzer. Ain't a blood min Hasheni mamzer. Masha'in came if the child, if it was Bola Harishan, Kedem, the second one gave her a get, so then it's mamash a mamzer because she's really married to the second. Now you have to understand, l'chura sofkol sof, there is kedushin midrabanan, and since there is kedushin midrabanan, so l'chura why isn't the mamzer midrabanan? Sometimes we say that l'moshel, if there was kedushin cheresh, and then someone was Ba'ala, so the chur over there it is a mamzer, and over here we're saying it's not a mamzer. So you have to that's already a kasha that l'chura. Why don't we say that it's considered a mamzer because in kedusha midrabanan? Over here you have to say l'chura that over here sof kol sof we're not talking about regular kedusha midrabanan. We're talking about kedusha midrabanan which be'etzem miyun should help. It's a different type of kedusha. A kedusha midrabanan which miyun should have helped. That type of a kedusha midrabanan. Kedusha Cheresh Mian doesn't help. Over here, it's a Kedusha D'Rabbanan, which Mian should have helped. Elamai, that there was a din that Mian doesn't help after she becomes a Gdela. Lepel, by being a Skatchel Acher, that in itself was Mian. So there was a Mian. It's just that Mian is not enough, so you need still a get. But could be, after there was Mian, so Sof Kol Sof, if someone was Bala with that Kedushin, that's not considered a Mamzer. That's L'chura, maybe Pshat. I'll call upon it. Yeah, so the Rekudas Advarim is that if there was an union of Kedushim and Atera, or even a Chash Kedushim and Atera, so then even though, so we're Choshesh that when she was a Gdoila, she had Siman. Masha'in came if we're dealing only with Kedushim and Rabbanan, so then if she's Mamash a Gdoila, we know she's a Gdoila, so then Mian doesn't help. Masha'in if we don't know she's a Gdoila, so Mian helps. Yeah, and then if there's two marriages, so we have to realize that the first one is a Kedushim and Rabbanan, because Lepel there was no bia afterwards. There's kama pratim here. One prat is that if there was a bia after she became a gdoila, so that makes a kedushim minatera. That changes the kedushim the rabbanon to kedushim minatera. That's the number one. And number two is that if she becomes a gdoila, even if there was no bia, so mion doesn't help anymore. Mion doesn't help anymore. Halachah zayin. Ezi iktana shetzricha l'mayim. Mibat sheish ad bas eser shonim, if she's between 6 years old and 10 years old, is beit knesel lefiyefi daita. Im yidas lishmish kedusha be'shein kedusha. She knows what marriage means. Is leisha tishmeresum kedera shemishameres ha'egis utmoru kiyetzubem. But she understands that this is a marriage. They're giving her money for a marriage or whatever, or giving her a get for a marriage. Is arezu tzichamiyah. So it means she understood what marriage meant. And therefore, she needs meal. She needs meal. She doesn't understand what marriage means. Is memela is ain't tzichle mind. So that's bechlal not marriage. That's bechlal doesn't go together a marriage, and she doesn't even need meal. It's not kedushin bechlal. El hilechel is beis ima kilele iskach meil. That's between 6 and 10. Pchusim b'sheish is afil yidas lishmer is ain't tzichle meal. V'yisei al bas eser, afilas chola b'yeser, is tzricha miyah. V'chol mi she'isiu acher ime kriveh shalei l'daita, ain't tzricha l'mayim. It says the whole din of miyun is only if she was masking to the marriage, so then she's considered married midrabanan. She's considered married midrabanan, so then she needs miyun. Masha'in came if she was never masking to the marriage, so then she doesn't need miyun midrabanan. Ketzad m'maynas, a marriage b'fnei shnei edim, ein ritzeini b'pleini baili. Ein ritzeini b'kedushin sheketshuni imi yachai. Okay, it's with our melu. Afilo hoya orchem b'subim beis baili v'yei medes umashkalem. And v'omra eini reitzi b'pleini baili is a reza miyun. In other words, it doesn't have to be up to an official zach. It could be like a casual. They're in the middle of serving in the house, and she stands up and says, "Eini reitzi b'pleini baili." The male is harizimia. Now, Shnayim Shemanis Aktana Befneim, Kesulo, that being plainy, Miana plainis bas plaini, Befonenu, Beplaini Bailo, Vechesman Venesulo. Vizel Gufa shall get meal. No, they could write her a start. She should have a raya that she was taking a mind. We get me on Enik, you get Hagerishin, Shenesinosi Megarshin. By a get Gerishin, the Pshat is the Maisa and the Sina is what makes the Gerishin. Vein tzricha ksiva lishma, v'lei mesira, v'lei dover mishpati get hagerishin. Vein keivsun beitevsi haget. Shema yirah ki get gerishin. You don't write the nusach like a get. Kilu, there's a ganze nusach. The fishaini ele kemaisa bezin, or those bezin is just saying over a story. There's like a document that she should have a raya that she was nismai. Halacha yud. Hashnayim shemanas b'fneim, tzrichim shiyu makirin esa v'ezbaila, they have to know. No, she comes along. She says that she's being minding him. She has to know that who she is and who her husband is. Lefichach kol mi shiro oisa shemiano v'shoma miunel yesh leilichtiv get miunlo afal pi she'eni makira. Now here the lashon afal pi she'eni makira. The Rambam just finished off saying that tzorach shiyu makirin esav ezbailo. To bring from the Aruch HaShulchan, that means since he sees that she's being mamayin b'fnei edim, so and the din is doch that miun only helps b'fnei misha makira, so we could assume that they're makira. I don't really chap pshat. I mean, the question, you have to be makira to know that this is her name and this is him and that they're husband and wife. I'm not sure what it means. Afal pishem in makira. Lefichach kol mi shero'es shemiana v'shama miuna is yeshli lichtiv get miunlo. Afal pi she'ein makira. No, afal pi she'ein makira. Ukvar noagi Yisrael lichtiv get miun benusach zeh. Get miun. Bekach v'Shabbos, kach v'kach yem l'chedesh pleini, shnas kach v'kach l'minyan pleini, whichever minyan it is miano pleinis bas pleini befonenu v'omra, she'imi ayache hituni, v'yisiyuni ekitshuni v'aniktana l'pleini bar pleini, v'hashte galisi daiti kodamechen. I don't want him. I'm not going to be with him. We were beidik v'zbaralonu the adayin ktani uksavna v'chasamna v'yahivna says that she's still a ktani b'shonim we're talking about. Uksav, because that's all you have to know. Uksavna v'chasamna, and the truth of the matter is if she's a ktani, even if she's a gdela b'shonim, but lepeil if she didn't bring simonim, well, we don't know that she brought simonim. So we assume she's a ktana, she can be mine, like we learn. So you have to really understand. The bedakna plain is bov is baralon or dain ktana. He knows as far as we know, she's a ktana. Uksavna v'chasamna v'yahivna lo l'schusu l'raya brura. Plaini by plaini eight, plaini by plaini eight. That's it. So that's the din of miyun. Halacha yud beis. Let's know inyan. That a person is not allowed to be mazur grushos. Hamegarish is ishtei, v'neskacha le'acher, is afal pishali ba'ala, is nestra ala rishon. So that there's a yisur of being mazur grushos. V'mhirzer harishon u'ba'ala, he married her, and then he was a ba'ala leika. V'keifan esi lehetzi, shenama le'yuchel ba'ala rishon v'gema. So there's a law that a person is not allowed to marry grushos. Someone, a woman that he was once married to, and then he divorced her, and she got married to someone else. So even if she was only in the skacha, so he's now let her remarry her. However, Zimtzer Machik Shigrusha is Muteres Lavzel Lebaila. Shnema V'yotzim B'beisa V'holcha V'hoisel Yishacher. Havayosil Yishacher Shia Kedushin He Sheyiseres Esal Baila Lavzel B'beisa. So if she was Niskatcha Lacher without Bila, she's Asura. And if she was Nivola to him without Kedushin, so then she's not Asura. Ubiklal Lavze, in this lav of being Mavze Grushose, is also Shekol Isha Shezin Tachas Baila is Nesra Olav V'leika Olav. Person that lives with his wife after she was in Macher, that's also part of the same Isser. Shenemar, Achrei Asher Hu Tamo. Over there it says the Lashon Achrei Shu Tamo by Mavze Grushose. And over here, when a woman was Zinsa Tachas Baila, is Varei Nitmo. That's so Mela, a woman that was Nivala La'acher, Achar, Nivala La'acher, while she's married, so she became Nitma, and Memela, she's Asura L'Baila. Elim came, Hoisha Eishis Yisrael Shenanza. If she was Eishis Yisrael Shenanza, so then she doesn't become Asura L'Baila. V'hi Leinis Pas. Leficha Kol Isha, Shenasra Al Baila Yidekinu Yistira. So it's a suffix, maybe she was Nivala. Is in Baal Esa Makanesa Makas Mardus, because there's an Isser to be Baal Ishte, because she's maybe Nasra Al Baila, because maybe she was Nivala. Vim Ava Vihilzira Acha Shegirsha is Yetzi Beget. So even if he was Megarisher and then he was Mavzer, so she has to be Yetzi Beget, because Lepel, she's married. Vim Ava Vihilzira Acha Shegirsha, I'm sorry. Vim Ava Vihilzira Acha Shegirsha knows there's an Isser be Mavzer Grushasi. Lepel, he was Mavzer Grushasi, and that was an Isser. But from Desvin, it's just Kedushin Tevsimba. Memelis is Yetzi Beget. She needs a get. Halacha Tezvav. Cheresh shegirish beremiza k'mesha biyanu. If a Cheresh got married when he was a Pikeach, so his Kedushin was a Kedushin Menatera, and then he became a Cheresh, so he can't be Megarish. Masha'inkin, if he got married as a Cheresh, so his Kedushin was only a Kedushin Midrabanan, a Cheresh not a Pikacha, so his Kedushin was only Midrabanan. So Memela, so just like he was married al Tzacheresh, he could be Megarish al Tzacheresh. So Cheresh Shegirish Beremiza K'mesha B'yanu. And then, so this woman, which was married Midrabanan, and then she got divorced, is V'holcha V'niskatcha L'Cheresh Acher, which was also Kedushin Midrabanan. This Pikachas got married to a Cheresh Acher, which is also Kedushin Midrabanan. Vein Tzorech Leima L'Pikeach, now the second Kedushin is Kedushin Menatera. Is Asura Lavzer L'Baila HaCheresh. So this Isser of Mavzer Grushase also refers to someone that was married originally only a Kedushin Midrabanan, and now this woman got married another Kedushin Midrabanan, so he's not to be Mavzer Grushase Acher Shenisas. Aval Ishte Shel Pikeach Shenisgarsha, V'holcha V'nisas L'Cheresh V'nisgarsha. So that is Muteres Lavzer L'Baila Pikeach. So someone that was married a Kedushin Menatera, and then he got divorced, and then she got married a Kedushin Midrabanan. No, she got married to a Cheresh. So the Kedushin Menatera, the Kedushin Midiraisa is not considered really a Kedushin, and therefore when she gets divorced from the Kedushin Midrabanan, so the Baila Harishin is able to be Mavzer. That's the difference. So notice, if you started with a Kedushin Derabanan, so you're not allowed to be Mavzer Grushasi, because that's the difference. Kedushin Derabanan, you're not allowed to also be Mavzer Grushasi. Mashenkin over here, since this was a Kedushin Menatera, and now the second Kedushin was a Kedushin Derabanan, is Legabi, the Kedushin Menatera, that's not called Mavzer Grushasi, because Lepel, she never got married. From a Menatera Dika level, she never got married. Now this halacha is like a steer a little bit to the halacha that we learned earlier, B'nigeya, the Ra'isha, Sheshamash, that Shemez Baila, and then she got married to someone else, and then Bob Baila, so the din is she got Nisas to someone else, so the din is that she's Asura Tlarishan Alasheni, and over there the din was, Sai, if the Baila Harishan was a Pikeach, and the Baila Hasheni was a Cheresh or Fakert. L'chure Bishleim, if the Baila Harishan was a Cheresh, and the Baila Hasheni was a Pikeach, so then it's a problem of staying married with the first, because it's nireh k'mavzer grushasi. That was the Yisur. The reason why she needs a get. She's not married to the first. Elamai, she needs a get from the second, because Shalayemar, that Eishasish Yetzis will get, since she was an Isas, so people should say, they shouldn't say that she's Eishasish Yetzis will get. So now, once she has a get from the Sheni, so she needs a get from the Rishon. I let the Rishon take her back, because really she was only married to the Rishon. because it's nirik machzir grushasi. So bishleim, if they're both pikhim, or if the rishon was a cheresh and the second was a pikeach, so that's a problem. There's nirik machzir grushasi. But if the rishon was a pikeach and the second was a cheresh, so the din is that a pikeach that divorced his wife, and then she got married to a cheresh, she allowed to be machzir grushasi. So what's the problem of nirik machzir grushasi? That's the Stirim Magid. Mishnah talks about it. I'll call upon him. The pshat over there is because they made a lay plug. The question is over here, make also a lay plug. But we discussed this earlier. I mean, we didn't really explain the answer. The Mefarshim talk about this. Halachah Tezayin. So till now we're learning dinim of machzir grushasi. There are machzir grushasi mishon nisas. You're not allowed to be machzir grushasi mishon nisas. Now machzir grushasi means you were married and then she was a grusha. Now we're talking about a ma'anas. When a woman does miyun, it's not the pshat. Miyun is another way of geirushin. A miyun is oike the ganze musik of kedusha. Memela is kilu. She was never married. That's the gay over here. A ma'anas ain't a megureshes miman. Someone that does miyun, she's not called megureshes. And v'dina im baila shemiyan obey, kedina im mishale kitchemelim. It's as if they never had kedushin. They lived together, but they never had kedushin, and therefore he muteres bekrevav. She's allowed to get married to his krevim, v'hu muter bekreviseh, because they never got married. They were never married. And just like a ma'anas isha, so he doesn't become aser be'achesa. She's not aser in his brother, because they were never married. So over here also, once she makes miyun, it's kilo, they were never married, so he's muter in her krevim, she's muter in his krevim. And also, she doesn't have a din of a grusha. And vim nisas la'acher, if let's say a woman was married to someone and then she did miyun, and then she got married to someone else, and v'gir sha'acher imes, and the second husband died or gave a gerushin, a miyanabeh is muteres la'azul rishon. So she's muteres la'azul rishon. Why? Because she was never married. She was never married to the rishon. V'le'ed nochmer, a bigger chidush. Elafilu girsha rishon. No, someone was married to a ketana. He was married to a ketana, which she was a bas miyun. But she wasn't the mayan. He gave her a divorce. And then, since he gave her a divorce, if she goes ahead and gets married to someone else, and that person, let's say, gets a divorce, gives a divorce or whatever, so then there is a isser of hafzik grushasi. Because even though the gerushin is only midrabanan, but nevertheless there's a isser of hafzik grushasi, even though it's a gerushin midrabanan. So Memela, at this point in time, she had a din of a grusha. And then the Hichzira, the first husband that was Megarisha first, took her back, and then Umiyanabe, then she made Mion on the first husband, and then Vinisas La'acher, and then she got married to someone else, Acher Shemiyanabe, after she made Mion on her first husband. And then the Girsha Acher, and then the second husband was Megarish. So let's get the case again. Reuven married a woman, and he divorced her. So she has the din of a grusha, even though she was a ketana, she has the din of a grusha. Then he remarried her. Again, the second marriage, she was mamayin in Reuven. After the miyun, she goes ahead and she marries Shimon. And then Shimon divorces her. So now the question is, l'chura, could Reuven marry her again? Because l'chura, she was married to Shimon after Reuven divorced her. So if there wouldn't have been the second marriage of Reuven and the miyun, so then Taka Reuven wouldn't be allowed to marry her. Because since Reuven divorced her, even if she was a ketana, so it's gerushin midrabanan, but then she got married to Shimon. So again, so now she can't, now that she got married to Shimon, and she got divorced, so she became almana, so the din is liyuchel baila rishon, loshiv lekachta. So Memela, Reuven can't take her back. But since Reuven married her a second time, and the second time she made miyun, so the miyun doesn't only undo the second marriage, there's the chiddush, that the miyun undoes even the first marriage. And Memela, now it's kila, she was never married to Reuven, even though she was originally not only married, she was married and divorced. But now this is Oicher side the original marriage and side the divorce. And Memela now, after she got married to Shimon, and Shimon gave her a divorce, so she became an almana from Shimon, so now she could go back to Reuven. That's what he's saying. And then the Ichzira, and then Umiyanabe, and then Vinisas La'acher, Acher Sheminabe, and then the Girsha Acher is Muteris La'achzer Larishan. Why? Shekol HaYetzes B'miyan, since she was Yetzes from the first one B'miyan, Is afal pisha kod me get, even though before the mion there was originally a get on the first marriage to this person, is harezeh kemishal imizgash meno beget mela. It's as if she never had a get from him, and therefore mutaris lachzit. That's only going on the first husband. If there was mion on the first husband, so therefore she's allowed to get married to him, even though she got divorced from the second husband. Aval, the other way, hamegarish saktana beget, and then v'nisas la'acher. And she was miman in the second husband. So the chura, the mion on the second husband should also the chura two off that she was never married to the second husband. And if she was never married to the second husband, the chura she should be mutter to go back to the first husband. Is von deswegen asura lazel rishon. Why? Mepnei she yotzes mimenu miget, because lepel she was divorced from the first husband. Is afal pi she yotzes min achron b'mion. Even though lepel she's yotzes min achron b'mion, but the mion doesn't take away lepel. She was married to the first one and she was divorced from the first one, and then she got married to the second one. So the mion doesn't take away that marriage to the second one to say that there's no problem of being mazur grushasi. Mion only takes away that she was never married to the first one, but it doesn't tuov that she's not married to the second one. And tzerich leimer, if there was no mion to the second one, girsha ha'achron mes, so she's also asur. That's the chiddush. So mion takes away the kedusha rishon, even if there was a get by the rishon. Masha'enken mion doesn't take away the kedusha sheni, and therefore, if the first one was a get, even though the second one was mion, there's still a din of you're not allowed to be machzor, because she got married. V'chein asura la'avi horishin v'levnei u'la'achiv k'shara grushas. That's pashut. Whereas legabe the first marriage there was no mion. So maybe the first marriage she went out with a get. With a grusha, she's not allowed to live. Once she's divorced from her husband, she's not allowed to live with her husband's father, her father-in-law, or to his brother, or to his child. Kishara grusha, she's a grusha. Afal pi she yotzim an achron b'mion. The mion that she does with the second one is not going to undo the kedushin that she had with the first one, which is l'chura pashut. Before we learned that the mion that she had with the first one could undo the gerushin that she had with him, even though she had first a kedushin and a gerushin, but the mion that she had later undoes keila. There was never a kedushin, there was never a gerushin. But the mion that she has with a second husband is not going to undo the fact that she had kedushin and gerushin with the first husband. Yeah. Halachah Yud Zayin. Hamanas biyov. Now we learned before that when a woman makes mion, so she becomes mutter. So it's keila that she was never married, and therefore she becomes mutter to all the kroivim that she was usher. When a woman's married to someone, so this kroivim, she's usher to his father, to his brother, to his children. She's usher in his kroivim. Even after she gets divorced, she still remains usher to the kroivim. That's only if she gets divorced, so she becomes an almana. Masha'en kein, if she does mion, so then she's muteres bekreva, because through the mion, she's keilu uprooting the marriage as if there was never a marriage. Now, normally you do mion, she does mion with her original husband. Now, by Yavama, a woman that was married to someone, and then her husband died. So l'chura, she's an almana. But here, she's a Yavama. She's a Yavama. So she's skuka to his brother. This is all on a drabanadika level, because we're talking about a ktana, a kedusha ktana. Now she could go ahead and do mion on the yavam. Go to the yavam and say, no, I'm not interested in the yavam. Now, by doing mion on the yavam, she's really uprooting her original marriage to the brother that died, to her original husband. And Mamela now is kilo, she was never married. No, if it's kilo, she was never married, so the chura, she should be mutter to all the krevim of her original husband. Now, that's l'chura. But lepel, there's a special din that she's usher to her father-in-law. Why? Because, if she does mion when her husband's alive or knows to her husband, she goes and does mion, she uproots the marriage. But since lepel, the husband died, so Mela, she was like an almana. She was an almana. She was asura to her father-in-law, also an almana. And now all of a sudden she is doing mion on the yavam. So Mamela, so the isser on her father-in-law doesn't go off. Since at the point in time when she became an almana, so the father-in-law was a isser. There was an isser to the father-in-law because she's kalase. So Mamela, that isser of kalase that happened when her husband died doesn't go off even after she does mion on the yavam. That's the din. Masha'inkin, the other relatives, she is mutter, and therefore she's also mutter to get married to the other brothers. In other words, the brothers. In other words, normally the din is if there's yivam, the husband that dies leaves brothers. So one brother does either yibun or chalitza, and then she's usher on the other brother. She's usher on the other brothers. It's not isser of eshusak, but there's an isser. She's not allowed to live with the other brothers. Over here, legabi, the other brothers, it's keilu she was never a yivama, and keilu there was never a zika, and memela she's mutter on the other brothers. That's what the Rambam is saying. Let's read inside. Halachah Yud Zayin. Hama'anes biyavam. So even though she was ma'anes, is nevertheless asura la'aviv. She remains asura to the aviv of the yavam and the aviv of her original husband. Why? Mipnei sheniris ki kalosi be'eshem es bnei. When her husband died, so at that point in time, she seemed like his daughter-in-law. So now to undo that, we can't undo that. Aval l'sh'ar krevim muteret, but she is muter l'sh'ar krevim. Lefichach imiyana be'echad min ha'yivamim, if she was mimayin be'echad min ha'yivamim, so then is muteres liyachiv. So then she's muter to the brother. She could say, he has a few brothers, so the brother that she was mimayin, she was doch mimayin. Mashenk and the other brothers, normally, if she would get chlitza from one of the brothers, she would be usher the other brother. But since here she was mamayin in one of the brothers, so therefore she's muteres liyachiv. That's what the Rambam is asking. The Ramban argues, the Ramban holds she's asura b'shar krevim. She's only muteres b'shar achim because of the special din, because she was like skukul yavam, and they were all like potential yavamim, and therefore when she gets married to one of her brothers, it looks like a yibum. Al-Kopam, the Ramban argues with this Nikud of the Rambam. But that's what the Rambam is passing. The Maggid Mishnah brings. But this is what the Rambam is passing. Nachamo, that Hama'enes biyavam, she's asura on she's asura on her father-in-law. She's asura on her father-in-law. Even though the Chumiyun undid the whole marriage, so he's not really a father-in-law. But since Bishas, when her husband died, she looked like Kalosi, so that Isser remains. Masha'inkin, she's mutares after the miyun to get married to the other brothers. Now, could she get married to the brother which she was mamayin in? The Rambam doesn't say no. The Rambam says she's mutares la'achiv, the pashtus, because this brother she's being mamayin. She's not interested in this brother. But once she did miyun, is she mutares la'achiv? So the Mukiyesim in Yevama says kolshkin she's asura to the person she did miyun in. The person should be in it. And the Rambam doesn't say it. I'll call upon the Rambam doesn't say it. Halachah Yudches. Kol isha shenis garsha eshenis almana. So the din is harezu leitinose v'leitis aris. She shouldn't even become a harusa. Ad shetemtim tishim yem. She has to wait 90 days. And those 90 days are chutz miyem shenis garsha eshemes bailabei. And also the chutz miyem shenis arsabei. There should be 90 full days between the day that she got the get or her husband died and the day that she's becoming an arusa. What's the end of the 90 days? It says after 3 months is hukar ha'uber. So memela, we want to know if she's a muberes or not. Because you want to know whose child it is. Is it the child knows? If you're not going to know if she's a muberes or not, so you're not going to know if it's a ben tisha l'rishon or it's a ben shiva l'shem. Umiyem ksivas haget menel megureshes. You start from the day of the ksivas haget. Afilo hoya atnai eisheligia liyad lachar kamashonim is miyem ksiva menem. Shari eni misyachadim mishakosvula. After you write the get, you're not supposed to be misyachad, because if you're misyachad, it's a shaila of a get yoshin. It's a problem that you're not allowed to give such a get. So if you give a get, the pashas were assuming that from the yom ksivas haget they weren't misyachad. So memela, so the tishim yom, this shleisha chotchi avchana could start from Yom HaKsiva. Ugzeres chachamhi shafilu. So this is a reason, mitzal, we want to know lahavkin bein zara shurish and zara shushain. Ugzeres chachamhi shafilu isha shein ruya leilit. Vafilu nizgar shein nesalm neiris. So they weren't living together. Is nevertheless tzricha lahamten tishim yem. Unafilu ktana eskein yakor yailinus. In all cases, in other words, obviously she's not a muberes. She's not a muberes. Either she can't be a muberes, or her husband is not here b'chlal. but nevertheless, vafilu psula meneirison. She's still a psula. Is nevertheless tzrichis lahamten tishim. So that's the din. Any woman that was married and she got a divorce or her husband died, so she has to wait 90 days from the yom ksivas haget, or from the day of the divorce, 90 days, chutz the day of the divorce and chutz the day of the almana, and the day she gets married is after the 90 days. There should be 90 full days in between the date of the get and the date of the marriage. Now, shivcha, that's a person that was married. The person was married now wants to get remarried. The same din applies. Shivcha shenashtachara or v'giyerish gaira is also mamtina tishin. Over here, what's vafilu ger v'ishtish gaira? They got married together. They were married together before they were nizgair, and now they both became geirim, and now they want to continue living as husband and wife. Is mafrishin esim tishim yem? Why? So you want to know if there's the zeresh nizr b'kedusha, the zeresh shalei nizr b'kedusha. So you wait 90 days. You have to wait 90 days. So notice, if it's not a gerve ishtation is gyrus, we want to know whose child it is. Is it a child of a previous, or is it the child of this person that's going to marry her? She became a Gieris and now she's getting married. So you want to know whose child it is. Is it the child of the person that married her, or is it a child from someone that she lived with before she became a Gieris? Over here, even the Ger and Gieris, they got married together. They became a Gierim together. So obviously, either way, it's their child. But you want to know if it's a child that was Nizr B'Kedusha or a child that wasn't Nizr B'Kedusha. V'chein yifas te'er, afal pi shenosnu lo te'er shleisha yom l'takonas atzma, aber tzricha lahamten tishim yom l'takonas avlad. V'hashleisha miklal atishim. In other words, there's the bir Rishena, which he does b'giyusa. That's what he does right away. Then he gives her another 30 days. Then he decides if he wants to marry her, if she decides, they decide to get married. And then at that point in time, they have to wait another 60 days to make sure that whose child it is, whether it's a child that was nailed b'giyusa when she was a goya. Now the Maggid Mishnah says that this din, that he has to wait 90 days for a fasteir, when when he has to wait 90 days when he get a shifcha or giesh in his gaira, is only talking about if they were married. In other words, because we're soon going to learn that if a person was ba'ach biznus, so you don't have to wait 90 days after znus, because we assume that by azena she's mistameh going to make sure not to have a vlad from this znus. So in the middle, we're not choishes that you need the shleishi chochi avchana for a znus. And the Maggid Mishnah said that belies also to a goya. Even by a goya, we say a shivcha or a goya, shenis gairo, shenis tachra, is only if they were married earlier, so you have to wait 90 days. Mashenkin, if they weren't married, the taka don't have to wait 90 days. And even though Lepel, by the Yifaster, he was bala right away, but the bala was a bala biznus. It wasn't a marriage taka bala. So he doesn't have to wait 90 days because of that beer. Yes, he only wait 90 days. We're worrying about the beers that she may have had with goyim before she was nishbis. So memela, so that's only if she was married. That's what it says in the Maggid Mishnah. And Rambam doesn't say it. Doesn't say it so clearly. The Pashtus Advarim is that every goy we're concerned that she was nivala. Maybe by goyis you could taina that over there she's not shemer satzma. But that's what it says in the Maggid Mishnah. Halachah chav beis. Hama'enes eino tzricha lahamten. That's the hamshach of this perik. Even though the din is that once she's divorced or she became a almana, so she has to wait 90 days. And that din is even if it's a ktana. But hama'enes, if she was a ma'enes, and a ma'enes the chaktana, and memela obviously she wasn't really able to become nivala anyways. Hama'enes eino tzricha lahamten. The gzeir was only by a grusha. The chena mezana is also in the tzricha lahamten. Mipnei shemishamer esatz mishalei tesaber. The chen anusa mafuta is also ein on tzrichas lahamten. So when do you have to be mahamten? Only by marriage. If she was married and she got divorced, or she became an almon, marriage is not a memanis, and not as mezana, and not a anusa, not a mafuta. Halacha chav gimel. Mishin isaz betois. So the Gemara says a case over there that two men made Kiddushin on two women, this is, and by accident, the Nesuyin, this is, each man made Nesuyin, but he made Nesuyin on the wrong woman, So Keilu, Reuven and Shimon had Rachel and Leah. So Reuven had Rachel and Shimon had Leah. So Reuven had Nesuyin with Leah, and Shimon had Nesuyin with Rachel. That's what happened. There was Nisas B'tois, and V'neida she Asura L'bayla. And then they realized they realized she was Asura L'bayla. It was already after she was Nisas. And then V'etziu Bezin Mitachtov. And now she has to go back to her proper husband, because it was B'shegi, it was B'enis. So obviously it wasn't, she doesn't become Asura to her original Baal. She's Asura to this Baal that she's living with right now, but she's Muteres to her real Baal. V'etziu Bezin Mitachtov. Is a Mhoise Ktana, She'ena Ruya. Now the question is, does she have to wait Shleisha Chotshei Avchana to go live with her proper husband? Because she was already Nesua, so to speak. They were acting as Nesua to this other husband, which is not really hers. So over here, that's the Chiddush. Mhoise Ktana, She'ena Ruya Leilid, is Eina Tzricha Lahem. Why? Because she's a Dov She'ena Motziyu. And it's also not really a Chash. She's Saya Ktana and Saya Dov She'ena Motziyu. So if it would be a Gdeila, so it would be Takach Chash. Because the reason why by Aznus there's no Chash is because Shemeres is Atzma, but over here it wasn't Znus. She thought she was Nesua. So if she would be a Gdeila, it would be a Chash, but over here it was a Ktana. And Memela, there's no real Chash. Elamai, there's a general din that they made a Gzeira by Ktana as well, but in such a case, which is a Milsa L'Ishchicha, didn't make a Gzeira by Ktana. That's the Pshat. Shezed Davar Sheni Motzui, V'chol Davar Sheni Motzui, B'rei V'li Gozru. Halachah Chavdalat. Hama'ar is B'teich Tishim Yem. He made Eris and B'teich Tishim Yem, Menad Nesa. Iris Ubarach is a Menad Nesa. So this din that you make Nida, that's what you do. You don't do anything else. You put him in Nidui. However, Konas B'teich Tishim Yem is the Mafrishan Esen, Ad Achrizman, and then the Yam with the Mishnah. So he was only the Eris since he did something wrong. And if he's here, so Mele is always a chash, maybe so menad nese. Mashenkin, if he runs away, so then a menad nese. And Konas is mafrish nese. V'chein gozru chacham. So that's one thing. One thing, you're not allowed to marry a woman that got divorced or that became a almana unless you wait 90 days. Halacha chafei. V'chein gozru chacham. Another thing. Shaliyisa adam muberes chaveri uminekes chaveri. There's nothing to do with the Yisur when they get the 90 days. Muberes mitzat shema yazik avlad b'shas tashmish. Sheini makbid al ben chaveri uminika, because shema yisakra cholov. Whereas through, if she becomes a muberes, there's a concern that yisakra cholov. V'huayni makbid l'rapis acholov b'dvarim ha'meilu l'cholov k'shi yisakr. And Memela, there's a concern that Yisakar Acholov, and he's not going to give her the things that are necessary that the Cholov should be better in order for the Vlad, because it's not his Vlad. Kamu Uzmana Yinika Esrim Ba'arba Chedesh. Chutz Miyem Shanelad Bey Umiyem Shanesar Sebey. So it has to be 24 months, 24 full months besides the day he was born. Shem Shasoliso is also Kach Osel La'aris at Achaz Manza. You're not allowed to make Erison either to minekas chaveri. Afilu nosno bno leminika, eshegam lose betech esrim ba'arba chedesh, is also leitinose. She's not allowed to get married. Mez bno, however, is mutaris linose. Ve'en cheshin shematar genu mele in order to get married. The thing is, if mez bno, she's allowed to get married. Masha'en kein, if he's alive, so mele, even though she's no longer nursing him, or someone else is nursing her, from Nesvig for 24 months, you're not allowed to marry a woman that has a child that's less than 2 years old, less than 24 months old. Avar v'nosa muberes eminika b'teich zmanzeh. Lepel, he was able, and he did get married to a muberes or minika, is yetzi beget. V'afilo ha'yikein. Memela, if he's going to be yetzi beget, he's not going to be able to get married again. So Memela, we say yetzi beget. Yisrael is Yachzerena Achra Esem Barba Chedesh Shel Minika. So after the 24 months, he could be Mazda. So that's the thing is, if Avar V'Nosa, you force him to get divorced. Nosa ubarach ulachar zman ba v'yoshivamishtei. Lepel, he ran away, so you couldn't force him to give a divorce, and now he's back, and now it's already l'achar zman. Is ein bekach klum. That's talking about if he was nosa miuberes iminika chaveri, iris miuberes iminika. So then ein kefunei silahitzi. Aber v'lei lichnis, he's not allowed to be kenes adachar zman hayinika at shiyam esavlah. He's not allowed to be kindness. But on the other end, you don't force him. In other words, for Erison, you don't force him to get divorced. Moshe Enkin, if he was Nisas, if they were Nisa, if he was, they got married, Nisuyin, so then you forced him to get divorced. But Lepel, if he ran away and you can't force him to get divorced, and he comes back, L'achar Azman, so then they can remain married together.